What is up, running fam? On this edition of Talks with Tiptop, we're chatting marathons, trail running, and everything in between with Alabama native Nick Fiedler. Now living in the desert, Nick shares with us what he's doing to beat the Arizona heat. He was running a marathon around his neighborhood before it was cool, so he shares that experience with us. And he also gives some excellent tips on training for his first Ironman, as well as for trail running. I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did.
All right, Nick, thanks for joining with me today. How's things in Arizona?
Arizona's hot. It's the summer, so we run from anywhere from 100 degrees. I mean, it's about 95 when I wake up at 6 a.m. and then it just gets up to anywhere between 105, and then if it's an awful week, 115. But aside from that, we're on a lockdown with essential businesses being open, and about to hit monsoon season, so hopefully it'll cool down, but it'll just pour down rain for about 2 weeks, and then it will stop raining for the rest of the year.
So, I mean, we were talking a little bit beforehand. Are you from Alabama?
Yeah, I grew up in Alabama. My parents are still in Helena, just outside of Birmingham, and I went to school at University of Alabama from 2000 to 2004.
Okay, so then for you running in the heat, I know, kind of desert heat and then, south humidity heat is different. How do you beat the heat running, man?
Yeah, well, I should say this. So I have never been in, I wasn't really athletic. I mean, I played all kinds of sports like growing up. Nothing really stuck. Like I played soccer. I was in freshman football in high school. I went through karate. I never did anything running related until I started in Georgia when I hit 30. I'm 38 now, so about 8 years ago, I just started running one day. So my first year of running was in the Georgia summers, Georgia heat. So I got used to the humidity there. But then almost right after I started, when I turned 31, I moved out to Phoenix. So most of my training and running has been through the dry heat. So just trying to wake up super early, and then figuring out how to hydrate in a way that works for me. So that's that's a little bit of that staying out of the heat, but I haven't done a whole lot in humidity except for when I've traveled back to Alabama or Atlanta to run, or if I've got a race that's on somewhere in the South.
So when you were in Georgia, what piqued your interest in running? Was there a 5K that you wanted to do, or a running buddy that you had at the time?
Not at all. I'm extremely cheap, and I had hit 30 and my metabolism had stopped. So I started noticing that I was slowly putting on weight. And then I had been, probably my whole life, I've been 150 pounds, from puberty on, just kind of stayed the same, kind of tall, slender. I'm 6 feet tall. So kind of same body type. When I hit 30, it seemed like it happened overnight, but I was almost 190. And I just thought I really needed to do something. I like my craft beers, and I'm not going to give up my craft beers. So I should do some kind of physical activity. And because I'm so cheap, I didn't want to join a gym. I didn't have any equipment. So I just put on the shoes that I wear to work every day, which happen to be, they were Nike shoes, but they're not like running shoes. They were just tennis shoes. And I walked out my door one day and ran a mile as fast as I could and threw up, and then walked home. And then I figured out that was a workout. So I started doing that every day. The throw up started getting down to dry heaving. And then eventually I could hold my stomach, but it was just a way to start to lose weight once I hit 30, because I realized that my metabolism wasn't keeping up. And so that's I stumbled into it just by it being the easiest thing to do.
And then 8 years later, you've won 20 something marathons, an Ironman.
Yeah. Yep. When I started, because I didn't think of myself as a runner. I think that's a lot of us. I don't know when you start thinking of yourself as a runner. If you didn't do it in high school or college, I know there are a lot of people that just don't call themselves that. My wife, for example, She doesn't call herself a runner, but she runs, and she runs more than ever, like I would have ever done before I was 30. But the whole first year, maybe even first 2 years, I never ran anything further than 2 miles. And I believed all of the things that you hear, like, well, long distance running is going to mess up your knees as you get older, like all of these things that I was hearing. So like, I even had friends that were like, you shouldn't run too much, man. It'll really hurt your body after time. Like, it's not, like, as you get older, it's not a good thing to do. So when I moved to Arizona, there's a race. So the longest distance I'd ever gone, there's a race called the Pat Tillman Run, after Pat Tillman. And it's 4.2 miles, because his number was 42. And they do it every year, and it starts and ends in the Sun Devil Stadium at ASU. And that was the first race I'd ever signed up for. I'd never done anything. So I'd never done a 5K before that, or a 10K or anything. But I signed up for that one because it seemed like a very Arizona thing to do. I just got out. And so probably 2.5 miles was the most that I'd ever run beforehand. And I ran that one, and I really enjoyed, like, ending in the college football stadium, just kind of like the atmosphere of all the people that were there. And I kind of got the bug to do some races. So that's kind of what started me thinking about maybe doing a couple races instead of just going out and running with myself.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always the first one, and then like something just like switches. You love just that adrenaline rush, especially with a race like that. I mean, there's a lot of like significance behind that race, and it's all about gathering the community together.
For sure.
Did you like join a running group like after that, or what was like your next? Were you like, okay, I want to do 10K next?
After that, I knew I wanted to do some races, and I wanted to do some longer ones. I had no interest in doing a marathon at that point. But there was a group called the November Project, which started in Boston for these two guys that wanted to work out and commit to working out even when it got really, really cold. So they just did these free outside workouts. Again, free, you're going to see that everything I do is pretty much cheap or free, or as cheap as possible. But they met at a park. They have like kind of chapters in a lot of different cities. But they met in a park here and did a Wednesday workout. It was a free workout, and they would basically, it was running stairs. There's this auditorium that's built into kind of a small mountain area, and they would just run stairs and do other types, like you'd run a few flights of stairs, do burpees, you'd do something else, and it was just every Wednesday morning you'd wake up and you'd go do this workout. So I started meeting people that were into different types of running, so some trail running groups and street runners, and started hearing about races that they were doing and different types of things that they were involved in. So that's what kind of made me think, I think I'd like to start training with some of these people. And so it just kind of like, I asked somebody if they were running on the weekend or how far they were going, and I would run in with them. And if I wasn't running a race, that group of people would go and cheer for other races. So like, then I kind of got into just like the racing scene in Arizona, and it made me being part of that group. And like, even if you're not running, just encouraging people that's running and like seeing people do hard stuff just kind of really got me fired up and made me want to join more groups.
I found that's really awesome. Did you get into like trail running when you were out there?
Yeah, it's the only time that I ever have. Again, another Arizona group called Aravaipa is a trail running group out here that does their own trail runs. I actually haven't done any trail runs with them, any of their like competitive series, but they would do on Wednesday, Thursday nights, would do trail runs in different areas around Arizona. And there would be, around the Phoenix area, but there would be up to like 100, 150 people that would come and run. And it would just be awesome that you would have these like huge groups of people, and they would go in like different, some people go on like a certain pace or a certain distance, and then other people would go faster pace or longer distance. And you could kind of just jump in with the group, and then afterwards they just go to the bar and hang out. And it was just kind of a cool trail running community. So I got into that. And then the Ragnar series comes through here and does a trail race, which is up in a place here called the McDowell Mountains. and that's basically loops. So you go camp out for the weekends, and your total mileage, if you're doing, I think your total mileage normally is about 15. I did some of the ultra, which kind of doubles it up to about 30 miles, but you do it throughout the night. So it's a relay race just around the mountains in the Phoenix area. So that's kind of the first one that I started getting into that was a little bit longer than like a 5K or a 10K.
I know 2020, obviously, all these like races getting like canned here. Are you just still hitting the trails, just going and just seeing where it takes you?
Yeah, trails or streets. I live downtown Phoenix right now. So right now I just run around the city, and it's pretty dead. There aren't a lot of people out there. So if I run in the morning, there's nobody on the streets. And then about 2.5 hours north of here is a town called Flagstaff. It's where NAU is, Northern Arizona University. My wife went to school there, and we go up there to escape the heat every bit. So maybe once or twice a month, but they've got some great trail running, and it's at elevation about 7,000 feet. So spend a good bit of time up there any weekend escape just to hit some trails that they have going through there and going through the mountains where it's a lot cooler.
Yeah, I bet. An Ironman. Have you done more than one?
Just one, and maybe only ever one.
Okay.
That came about because my sister was a collegiate swimmer. She was an all-American swimmer, and did that all through elementary school, middle school, high school, college. And she got into running and a little bit into biking later on after college, after having some kids, starting her family. She lives in Atlanta, and she had run some marathons, I think maybe one or two, and she was interested in doing a triathlon. And we had talked, I just started getting into running, and she thought that it was really funny that I got into running because I really, gave up on sports after high school. And I asked her one day through a text if she wanted to like do a marathon together or something like that. And she said, I don't know, it's a lot to train to do a marathon. So I think if I ever did another marathon, it'd probably be a Ironman, like a full Ironman. She said, I'd like to do that if I was going to train for a triathlon or a marathon. And she said, but I don't have anybody to train with. I said, I'll do it with you. Because I think I just run my first marathon. I was like, okay, like that's doable. And so that was kind of just a one-off conversation. Then eventually it developed. She was like, hey, so you really want to do that? Here's one in Texas. So it's halfway between her and me. And I was like, great, let's do it. I didn't have a bike at the time. I had never swam in the open water before. I was awful at swimming. And I had only run one marathon. So I just went online and like searched for like Ironman training, and just like kind of downloaded some stuff of what some people had said before. And it took about 7 or 8 months, but I like made up my own training program and just started training for it. And then we met in Texas, and we both ran a full Ironman, and it was a really awesome experience. One of the kind of probably the best achievement that I've ever had workout wise, I think, like, or exercise wise, crossing that and hearing somebody yell your name and telling you that you're an Ironman is probably like one of the top running / I guess swimming and biking exercise that I ever had.
Yeah, no joke. That's so many people run marathons, and that number is so small, but the Ironman one is just so much smaller.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely get that bug. I mean, even crossing, like finishing a marathon and like getting that kind of energy right when you finish that and you've accomplished that, like that's huge. And then there are so many other things like that are that you can also do that are kind of like one notch up from that. That's just, you kind of keep on building on it and just see what else you can do, or you just nail the marathon and that's what you get stuck on and you do that forever. And like, there are some people that I know that all they want to do is run marathons everywhere and do them in every state. And like, that's their one thing. And they're really good at marathons. Like that's their deal. And Yeah, I could see myself getting stuck on that. A lot of my my marathons are actually ones that I just ran myself. So I went through about 14 weeks where I was running, moved out to Berkeley for work for a little bit. And I had Mondays off. So I used that as a running day. And then I decided that I want to start running a marathon every Monday. So I would just pick up and go out, and every Monday I would just run a marathon. And I was able to keep that up for about 14 weeks before I was just like, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
So on a Monday, you would just run 26.2 miles.
Yep.
Straight up, like up and down the roads.
Yeah, I had mapped out this area, which was basically a rectangle, and 4 laps was a marathon. So it was pretty, like, it was just kind of the mental game of like getting into, all right, 1 lap is pretty easy. The second lap, you're halfway through. And I just kind of broke it down like that. The problem with that, and you might like tell me if you've experienced this before. I don't know if you could just get the bug from like having a marathon, or like not even a marathon. It could be a 5K or 10K. You run that, you love that. I started reading books by people that were talking about running. So like Born to Run, and some of those, a book called recently Endure, which is just about how your body works through putting it through high endurance exercises. And that stuff just made me think like, well, I'm not an athlete, but I could pretty much do anything I put my mind to if I worked on it. So during one of those things, listening to people like David Goggins or Cam Hanes, or 2 guys that I like follow that are just kind of like beasts, I just got the idea that like I could probably do anything. And even if those marathons were like 4 hours and 25 minutes, which is not fast for me, but I just wanted to see, could I push myself to do this every week? How many weeks could I do this in a row? So yeah, I kind of like, in the same way that you catch a bug crossing a finish line, I was like, well, what's the next step? I've run a marathon before. So how often could I try to do one of those? So that about 2 years ago now, that kind of got under my skin, and I was like, let's just see what I can do. And so I was able to do like 13, 14 weeks. So 13 or 14 of my marathons were just me running in circles around Berkeley, California.
Man, that's awesome. That's really cool. And I remember after, when all COVID struck all over the world, everybody was like, oh, I signed up for a half marathon or a marathon. And you were seeing videos about people just running around like on their roof, like,
yeah,
or around their block. So pretty awesome.
Yeah, there was a Instagram account that I followed of a guy that had a coffee table, and it was like thousands of laps around the coffee table to do his like half marathon or whatever. And he's just like, that's his workout every morning. But like, that's the kind of stuff where like I see somebody, like, that's the stuff that inspires me. Yeah. I love watching the Olympics or like watching like these big marathons that you can see people setting world records. But when I see people doing that in their house, and it's like, oh, they're like a normal person like I am. They just like had the mental ability to say like, I'm going to run around a circle 1,000 times in my living room. Like, that's the kind of stuff that just jazzes me up. And like, that's why I love following those people on Instagram. I love following them on YouTube or wherever. Just like, that's stuff that gets me going. I'm like, oh, okay, well that's doable. Like, any of us can do that if we just like put some effort for it.
Right. Yeah. And it's a mental game anyway. So
yeah.
I just think that's so awesome. And you were doing it before COVID, so it's cool. When you were training for the Ironman, how did you twist out, like basically what plan did you create for yourself? You don't hear about that a whole lot.
Yeah. I went on and found some plans. Like most places, you have to purchase a training plan. And I totally think that you should support coaches if you have the ability and the money to support a coach. I just went through a 10-day training program with a coach that personalized it to me. It's the first time I'd ever really done that, to have a personalized plan. And I saw in 10 days, I saw benefits to it. So if you can do that, that's definitely the best way to go. If you've got some money to have a coach do that. And virtual coaching right now is so, it's affordable, and it's beneficial just to have somebody that's you're accountable to. But for me at that time, I had gotten a plan that someone had used before. So somebody had posted their plan of their training, and it basically said what they needed to do for their like brick workouts, how long they needed to train. And I took that and I looked at my work schedule and I was like, okay, well, I work full time. So that means that in the morning, I'm going to have to wake up early and do a certain bit of this. And at the end, I'm going to have to do a certain bit. And I also decided where I could cut corners. So I knew that I was okay at running. And I thought, as long as I was concerned about the swim, because I thought as long as I can not get disqualified for time because of the swim, I can sit on a bike for over 100 miles. That's not going to be too hard as long as I can train my legs to do that. And then if I make it through all of that, even if I walked, I could probably like jog a marathon to keep. So like my plan was like, how do I finish? So I started there, and then I was like, what can I get better at? So like I can afford myself more time to do other things. So I found a plan online. And then I knew that in the summer in Arizona, it was so stinking hot that I couldn't work outside. So the majority of my cycling that I did was in a gym. I would just load up my iPad with like 3 movies or something like that, start movies, and then just put resistance on the bike and pedal for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours as long as I could. And then that would be kind of that either more like that would probably be the afternoon. As soon as I got off work, do that. So I would have some like swim in the morning and then do that at night. So it was different throughout the weeks, and it kind of changed. But basically I went online, found plans of what people had found was successful, and like tailored it to what would work for my schedule.
Have you been able to keep up with the biking or the swimming?
I still go and swim because it's such a great workout. I don't like it. I like being able to listen to either music or podcasts, or typically what I listen to while I run, because I can knock out a podcast or a few of them during like a 1-2 hour run. So I don't like that aspect of the pool because it's really just you and your thoughts. And like all of us, I mean, even if you do listen to stuff while you run, there are definitely times where it's just you on the road by yourself. And that's a long bit. But I still like swimming. Biking, I don't do too much anymore. I ran a cycle gym in Berkeley for about a year, and I still go to indoor cycling every once in a while because I like it as a workout. But I don't like necessarily going on long rides where I'm 40 miles away from my house. So if something happens, then I've got to call my wife and wait for her to get there like for an hour to pick me up because something went wrong with my bike or something. So I like indoor biking or biking like with a trainer, like on a trainer a good bit, but running's typically what I do pretty much across the board now.
Did you find any, and this could even go for marathon training too, anything like nutritional wise, things that you like just basically put in your body, you find differently from like the Ironman to a marathon?
Yeah. The biggest thing that I found that I needed to do, and I think everybody does, is be hydrated. And I didn't really understand what that meant. I thought that if I took hydration with me, then I was fine. But I didn't realize that you need to be hydrated before you're on your run, or you're on, whether it's your long run or your long bike. So what I started doing was drinking a lot of water the night before a workout. And then the first thing right when I wake up, I drink about almost 32 ounces of water and just let it settle so that I know that my body has all that it needs. So if I was perfectly hydrated beforehand, I could go longer without having to have water. And then I could just take it in a lot smaller bits. So I wasn't like incredibly thirsty and like drinking a lot. But drinking more like a little bit here and there. So that's not a recommendation to not drink water if you're running a half marathon at all. I think that you need water. You just have to be like completely hydrated. I went on a 10-mile run this weekend and it was 106 degrees outside. I took water with me and I drank throughout then. But one of the things that I found was being hydrated beforehand. Electrolytes, same thing. Like a lot of my nutrition I found like the day before and leading up to the race was just as important as what I was taking during a race or during a long run. And if I hadn't had electrolytes before I went on a run, and then like again, you're trying to stuff so much into your body, like halfway through a run when we needed that to start out with, and it's going to take a little while to get in there. So I do electrolytes as a drink before a run, after a run, and if it's going to be a long run, I'll put some in my water that I have. I like those chalk blocks. I'll take goos as well. Goos kind of feel like they slosh around in my stomach a little bit, but chalk blocks, great energy for me, and it's really easy for me to eat. I'm not really great on other types of nutrition. I mean, I kind of, post run, I do greens and a protein shake every day. So I've got a scoop of organic greens. It's basically like eating vegetables all day. So I have that. I just make sure that like throughout the, like before and after is where I really have a lot of nutrients. I still take things on a run, but like the big difference for me was when I started before and after my run, taking care of myself correctly there, because then I felt it during my runs.
And strength training. I mean, that's an important part of just kind of keeping the body going. You know, you can't just run 10 miles on a weekend. I mean, sometimes some people can, you know, but I mean, strength training has obviously played a part. I know obviously gyms are kind of closed everywhere. But I mean, we can talk, you know, pre-virus, you know, what do you usually do for strength training?
Yeah, a couple things. So even though this does kind of overlap with running, one of the things that I noticed sped me up a lot more was doing stair workouts. So you can almost always find, I have an apartment. We've got a set of stairs that's next to the parking deck. It's 5 floors, so it's 5 flights of stairs. I started doing like 40-minute stair workouts just once a week. And, you know, it's running up the stairs, kind of you get your breath as you get to go back down. And that was one of the things that I started feeling like was working out different parts of me. It's the same thing as like that you would get from a hill repeat typically, but that was one of the things that completely changed my game as far as like I felt stronger. And then it was just also easier to run normally. Like after one of those days workouts, like my run time just like dropped seconds per mile because I wasn't going upstairs. My body was just so happy. So that, and then when I first got an Amazon Prime membership, when shipping was free, I ordered a kettlebell, a 25-pound kettlebell, because that was really cheap to get shipped. So did that. And if you YouTube kettlebell workouts, you can find anything for core workouts and you can do a different one every day. So I throw on YouTube, put on, bring up the kettlebell and just do that and take care of like everything else that's not running related. My wife works at a PT clinic and she's got some exercises that she's put that you can use for a kettlebell since gyms are closed, but things that are going to be like squats and resistant bands, things like that you can do in the house. She's kind of prescribed to like get those other muscles working, so you're not just using street leg running muscles. But yeah, home workouts now. It stinks that we're all in our house, but so many people are coming out showing like the things that you can do at your house and showing those home workouts that I found that like you go on YouTube, YouTube or Instagram, you can find any type of workout. You can find the person that's doing stuff that kind of like you say what you have in your house, you look it up and you can find almost anything. So I try to like mix those in there as much as possible just to get something else working aside from just like running legs.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And I love what you were talking about with running up the stairs as it relates to hill repeats. And that's just strengthening the heart even more.
Yeah.
And the YouTube and in-home workouts, that's the norm now. So
yeah.
When you were, you're always kind of just cranking up the mileage. Are you like training for something?
So I've got 2 goals that are out. So I had the marathon Mondays that I was doing that I was really excited about. I did a when I was working for the indoor gym, I did a 24-hour cycle where I just stayed on a stationary bike with the exception of going to the bathroom for 24 hours and just pedaled in our storefront window to draw attention to the fact that we were a cycling studio and like bring people in. And then kind of the Ironman. So those were kind of like the three things that I like that were my goals. Right now, the two things that I'm working on are qualifying for Boston, if there's ever a marathon in the future again that I can run, and doing 100-miler. So those are the two things that I've got like for goals. The next thing that would probably be, it looks like there might be a trail run in August that would be about a 40-miler. So that would be the furthest distance that I've done so far. So if that goes on, then August, I'm hoping for a 40-miler. This year, if I could get a 100-miler in, I'd be really happy. We'll just see how that shakes out. And then, so it'll be 100-miler and qualifying for Boston are the two goals that I have in sight right now.
Assuming you have a couple different pairs of shoes, one for trails and one for road, right?
Yeah.
What are you, I guess, A, what are you wearing? And then I guess B, how many miles do you retire a pair? Or, obviously if there's a hole in your shoe after a trail run, it's time to get a new one.
I wouldn't say if there's a hole in it, there's time to get a new one. Let's see. I use these guys. These are Torrens. They're by Altra. This is like the Torren 4. I've had this pair for a year and a half. I love them. They've got probably about 1,500 miles on them. Again, I want to stress that I'm not suggesting that people do what I do. If like they recommend using, I think 500 miles on a shoe, you've got to listen to your body, and shoes are designed, if you find the right pair that works for you, they're designed to like last for a good enough time that the way that you run on them, like your body starts telling you when they're not working for you anymore, and you should replace them then. For me, one of the things I liked about these Ultras is that they haven't gotten to a point where I've started feeling the aches in my knees that I typically do right when like the sole wears out on a shoe. Part of that is because they're neutral and they don't have a lot of drop on them. So it's not like you're running in a shoe that's so high or so cushioned that you're feeling more of it as it like wears down. But the other thing is, right when you get the shoes to start off, they don't feel as cushioned as like if you get some of those bigger cushion. Like if you ever run in a Hoka, the first time that, like once they're broken in, the first few times that you run in them, it's like you're running on a cloud, which is super comfortable. These don't feel like that when I've started with them. And my trail shoes are also Ultra as well. The second thing that I like about them is they say that they're foot shaped. So they're kind of like bigger on the, you can kind of see here, like they're bigger on this side.
Yeah.
I don't have bunions, but I do have, like, I feel my big toe kind of pushing and wanting space. So these also give me a lot of space in there. So those are the two that I switch out. I like Ultra. The first pair I ever wore were just a pair of Nike tennis shoes. But I got into Newtons for a while with the little studs they have in the front. Because when I started running, I was striking with my heel, which I didn't know was a bad thing, but then it made sense that my legs hurt after a little while. And the way that the Newtons are is they've got like these little, I think they call them studs. I forget what they call them. But like right under like the balls of your feet, there's about half an inch row of these little studs. And it forces you to kind of, when you're running, to hit with the front of your foot and come back down as opposed to striking with your heel. And those changed my running form. I had a pair of trail and of road shoes from them, and they changed the way that I ran. And now when I run in everything, I run with a better form. But since then, so if anybody has form problems, I would definitely try Newtons, just long, like one pair, just go through them. But these, like right now, I'd say about 1,500. I'm going to need to swap these out right now. So like for me, I get about 3 times whatever they say a shoe should get out of it. That's what I run. That's what I like.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's listening to your body. So if your legs or your feet are hurting, well, something's wrong.
Yeah.
What's a common either, like, I don't know if misconception would be the right word, but when it comes to trail running, maybe some people are kind of maybe hesitant about it. They're like, oh, I got to watch where I step, so to speak. Or was there anything that maybe made you hesitant before going into trail running?
Out here, rattlesnakes.
No.
I've encountered a couple on trail so far that rattlesnakes and javelina that have run out in the middle of like just a run. The cool thing about street running is you can kind of, as long as you know which direction you're going, you can turn your brain off completely. You can be listening to a book or a podcast and completely listen to that podcast. When you're trail running, and I mean, you should be aware if you're running on the street as well. Like I run on curbs, or on sidewalks, not like the road. But when you're trail running, you do have to watch your feet the whole time. You've got to see where they're going to be because you have to have just kind of awareness of what you're running on, and then be ready to move and get your twitch muscles up so that as soon as you like get some soft gravel or hit a rock, like you're going to correct pretty quickly. So I was concerned about that because the first few times that I had ran on trails, I had fallen because I was listening to my music all the way up. I was like looking around at like all of the atmosphere, everything that was going on, and just got lost in the run and like just wiped out. So I had 2 falls that just like I got scraped up, hurt my pride more than anything else. But after that, I kind of one of the things that helped, again, not to go back to stairs, but I found a stadium that I could run stadiums in. And you realize the same thing in stadium. Like stadiums are great to run in because the distance between each one of the steps is different based off the section that you're in. So if you're in the higher section of a stadium, there might be a lot smaller and like deeper steps. But there's different places where you have to pay attention because the distance between those stairs is changing for different sections of the stadium. Or like you stop and then like you get to a like platform before you hit more stairs. So that was something that like I got training on, like moving my legs and really like looking at the places right in front of me and looking at the stair that I'm about to take. And now I feel really comfortable on stairs or stadiums. When I did that, it helped me take that to the trail, because on a trail, then I can know like, this is what I'm going to look at. I know that every step could be slightly different than the one before, just as like, if there's going to be a little bit of a drop or a little bit of an incline or something. So I think that's one of the things that helped me get more prepared for being on the trail. The other thing with trails is like, you do have to like make sure that you have your water packed in and things. Like you're not going to encounter, you've got to plan out your run a little bit more. Whereas here, as long as if I'm on the downtown, I will pass a gas station within a mile or 2 miles. I always know that's going to happen. So I've got a bathroom or like an emergency water, or like if I didn't pack the nutrients that I needed, like, cool, I'm just going to run into a gas station, pick it up. On the trail, obviously you don't have any of that. So like planning out, like this is going to be this far and this is how hot it's going to be. And there's going to be out here, there's going to be like no shade. So those, like, I actually had to think about runs on a trail, whereas I don't think about runs if I just run the streets. So I think that's like kind of like just getting your twitch muscles in your legs ready to roll on a rock and be cool with it. That's kind of the scary thing. Like you always feel like you're going to like roll your ankle and be out for the whole season. But I think like if you work on those muscles and you do things like stadium workouts, like that's probably the thing that helped me most when I started hitting the trails.
Yeah, I think you made some really great points there. You mentioned podcasts a few times. Are there a couple that are always like your go-to?
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, probably. I like anytime that I like Rich Roll, and anytime that Joe Rogan has on somebody that's like a Cam Hanes or a Zach Bitter, who now lives in Phoenix, who's the guy that set the U.S. 100-miler record. Anytime that he has an athlete on, I really enjoy listening to those. That stuff gets me like super jazzed. Those would probably be the ones that are like most related to running. The rest of them would just be off the wall, random stuff, conspiracy theories, and news deconstruction, things like that.
Is there a like a race location that you would love to run at? It can be a race, or if you're just like, heck, I want to run on this beach somewhere tropical.
Yeah. There have been a couple that I really like, and then there are a couple that I'd like to do. I mentioned that that I lived in the Bay Area for a couple of years in between living in Arizona. The Beta Breakers is the longest standing foot race in the States. And it basically, the main part of San Francisco is about 7 miles by 7 miles. So it's basically a 7-mile run across the city, and you go through pretty much every bit. And I did that it was kind of like my Pat Tillman here, but like it was one of the first races that I did while I was out there. And you get to see every single part of San Francisco. So like that was a cool one, and I'd like to run that again. The big marathons are kind of what I'd like to do. I'd love to do the New York Marathon, New York City, to run through there, Chicago, and then Boston. Like those are the three that I'd like to run. I like on any run, even like if I'm traveling or something, I just like running around a city and seeing it. I think that's kind of the best way to like understand a spot that you're around. Like you kind of get to know where the roads are. You get to know kind of like how to navigate around a city. So I love going to any city, and I think that Chicago, Boston, New York will probably be really good.
There something that you want to improve?
Yeah. Speed is the main thing. I think that like it's really easy as a runner to, once you get to a spot where you're still having good workouts, but you're comfortable. Like right now, I'm comfortable running a 7-10 mile for probably up to 8-9 miles straight. And so for a long time, you just you settle in, and it's like, okay, well, this is good. And I stopped pushing myself. So I think like for me, I always need to be pushing myself, or else like a 10-mile workout's great. Last month in June, I ran 10 miles every day on a treadmill. And I knew that was going to take a little bit of toll. So I slowed down to about 8-minute miles. And I noticed that like that didn't really get me better at anything doing a month of that. What it got me better at is like 10 miles in my mind is now like, I was really used to that, but it didn't get me faster, for example. And so I think that like any of us kind of have a place that we feel good about. And I think that we could probably always push ourselves a little bit more. And that doesn't mean there are some people that may never be able to run a 7-minute mile. So like maybe their biggest goal is to run a 10-minute mile, and they're happy with that. Like, cool. But like whatever kind of the thing is that you want to push yourself towards. So like maybe your goal is, if you're running a 10-minute mile, maybe it's just a 10 or a 9:50. But for me, like speed is the thing that I want to get better at. And I know that it's easy for me to just settle in like, okay, I'm going to do a 10-mile run today, and whatever it is. And I think that's where having a coach or having people that you run with or a running team is important, where you can have somebody say like, okay, great. Well, today we're going to do this speed, and we're going to stay at that speed. One of the things about not having running partners over COVID has been, I don't have anybody to push me while I'm on my runs unless I'm doing it myself. So sometimes I don't push myself as hard. So the quick answer is speed. I want to get faster. I need to be able to run a marathon at, I think it's 7-minute mile if you want to qualify for Boston these days. So I know that's my goal. So that means that I've got to like figure out how I can achieve that.
Thank you again, Nick, for talking with me. And if you'd like to give Nick a follow, scroll down to the episode notes below. Or if there's something that piqued your interest, feel free to reach out to us. Make each day your own masterpiece. Be good to each other, and remember, every day is a good day to run. I'll see you out on the road.